Okay, Alexander Hamilton, the man versus the musical. A few questions. How many of you had your favorite, or one of your favorite founding fathers of America, Alexander Hamilton, 10 years ago? Raise your hand, please. 1.5, 2.5, okay, good. How many have seen the musical now? That is incredible. How many saw it up on Broadway? A few of you got to? Wow, that's wonderful, wonderful. How many of you are familiar with the music? Okay, terrific, wow. This is unusual to have quite that coverage. So this is the itinerary for today. How has Alexander Hamilton been rediscovered? What's the essence of his life and his legacy? The wonder, what is the wonder? We've talked to so many people, we've heard feedback of the wonder of this musical. How does it work? Why did it happen? Why is it so special? Then anecdotes over the past 6 years of our touch points with Ron Chernow, who wrote the book, and then Lin-Manuel Miranda in the musical. We often get questions, well, what does it cover in the musical? And what doesn't it cover? Well, you know, it covers a lot. So that's more than enough, but people do want to know. So I have two slides on what it doesn't cover, just to share a richer sense of Hamilton. And then lastly, what has the impact been on society and individuals? Okay, so here is the nation rediscovering Alexander Hamilton. So we have this guy here, founding father, Alexander Hamilton. His name is Alexander Hamilton. There's a million things he's done, but just you wait, and I'm going to share some of those with you. There's a show dedicated to Alexander Hamilton, going from not anyone hardly knowing who he is to the biggest blockbuster musical is quite incredible. And then, how many of you have seen the preview on PBS of the making of the music? Wow, this is it. See, I told you this was a cultured group here. You'll see the date here of October 6, 2016. This was 2 weeks before it was going to go nationwide. And so they wanted to thank some of us who had helped in the making of the musical. So I was asked to come up. PBS had a few locations where they gave money to local PBS affiliates to put on get it all hyped up and get the word out before it goes nationwide. So I was asked to come up. And what Hamilton College, the heads of the college said, you know what we're hearing from our students? Again, 2016. There's all this big, great news about Hamilton. I've been here for a few years at Hamilton College. It was like no big deal. Is this just all hype? Does he really deserve this esteem? Is it backed up? So that was the core of how this talk started. And then with the feedback and the Q&A, I've been able to enrich it once I've learned. So the gentleman who did the making of the musicals, coincidentally, Alex H. His name is Alex Horowitz. Who knows who's on his right, our left? David Diggs, yes. So comments we get from you all the time are, do you really have a connection in your society with the musical, or are you just opportunists? Well, we started in 2011. It was off Broadway in January of 2015, so 4 years later, so we were ahead of time. And this is something nice to show you that there was a contact when I had mentioned only 10 days left for off Broadway, and got a response from Lin-Manuel liking that. But the one that means a lot most to us, there's only 3 things that we get proud of that I'm sharing here. The rest is all about Hamilton. But this was really special to us because Alex Horowitz, who was Lin-Manuel Miranda's college roommate, who produced the making of the musical, was sitting with Lin-Manuel Miranda, and they said the AHA Society were early friends of Lin's and mine on the show and the film. All right. Hamilton College, over 200 years, and they finally gave him an honorary doctorate. And then I said, well, is it just because every college has to have someone, so they just picked Hamilton? So very quickly, what's really interesting, in a formal American History Journal, volume 18, it says, Mr. Kirkland, the founder of the Academy, met Alexander Hamilton, who took unusual interest in his efforts, and was of such assistance that Mr. Kirkland thought it but a fitting compliment to call the institution Hamilton ONEIDA Academy. Now, the ONEIDA nation was the only one of the 6 of the Iroquois that supported what we call the Patriot side. And so that's why it was named that. And then I said, well, that's nice, it's in a history book, but we need primary sources, you know. And so fortunately, we just more recently found in Kirkland's actual diary, it states, Mr. Hamilton cheerfully consents to be a trustee of the said seminary, which almost all universities and colleges back then were actually seminaries, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and will afford it all the aid in his power, which was requested by Good Peter and several other Indian chiefs when at Philadelphia the last spring. And this is the last one that shows how special it is, because Hamilton, myself included, in my earlier thought that Hamilton was this overbearing, egotistical, self-centered monarchist who only cared about rich people. When you find out what he did for freed slaves and pro bono work and the Manumission Society and the Free African Free School in Manhattan, you see, and this is another example where Hamilton felt that the Indians were a noble people and should be included in the mosaic of America. So this actually is a letter that was found from the Indian chiefs. I'm just going to read a couple lines. From representatives of the Oneida Indians, brother, attend to our words. We write to you in particular because some of us know you. We have all heard that you are a friend of everybody, Indians as well as white people. We rejoice to hear it. We always want friends among our brothers, the white people. And then near the end it said, nobody can tell us what may happen. We think it may be good, and we wish you, brother, to recommend it to Congress to advise the Senecas and Onondagas at Buffalo Creek to send some of their children to be educated at a school which is erected in our neighborhood, where we have sent some of our children to learn to read and write, and that provisions be made for their support. We think that such a measure would serve to strengthen and brighten the chains of friendship with those nations. Brother, we salute you. This is all we have to say. And there was a society that was working to understand the strength of his legacy and to try to break through. And we made some strides in relationships with all key Hamilton sites. But when the musical came along, whew, boy, what a marketing arm that was. So here's an example of how far things have come. 5 years ago, some of our AHA board members went to Philadelphia with our insights and our knowledge about Hamilton being a worthy founding father. And so we got a fair feedback, which is, you know, we only have limited space and time, and there's a lot to talk about Ben Franklin, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams. Respect that, that's good. But they also said to us, Hamilton, here in Philadelphia, a top tier? You think he should be in the top tier of founding fathers? Then the musical comes. And look what happened just in the last year and a half. The National Park had Hamilton's first bank closed for 34 years, not open to the public. It's being reopened to 30 million, and money's flowing in faster than they even realized. And on here you'll see incredible Hamilton, Jefferson, and we have head of the Patterson manufacturing vision of Hamilton. There is Cindy McLeod, Superintendent of National Park Service for Independence, our president of our society, Nicole, President, CEO of the Museum of American Finance, and a number of the staff working to get the restoration done. Big change. Now the National Constitution Center. They have, how many have been to the National Constitution Center? Wonderful. In there they have Signers Hall. They have 42 life-size bronze statues. 39 did approve the Constitution, 3 did, but they're all their life-size. And here's Alexander Hamilton with them saying, the National Constitution Center celebrates Alexander Hamilton, Revolutionary War hero, constitutional signer, father of modern finance, and inspiration behind a smash Broadway musical. Visitors can learn about the founding father with the ultimate Hamilton Museum experience. And it's true. Those of you who have been there, on the second floor, which is the heart of the exhibit, they put big neon circles. Here is something about Hamilton. It was and then exhibits on the first floor. So it was a big change there. Now this is really big. It's almost a 2-year anniversary of the Museum of the American Revolution. It's only 2 years old, so I would think hardly anyone been to that one yet?
Where is
Wow, fantastic. $150 million museum, phenomenal. And if you walk outside the front door of the Museum of the American Revolution, you go into the front door of the first bank of the United States. And that was a big rap battle, you know, between Jefferson and Hamilton in the musical. So there's a lot of joy there. But what happened there? Oh, Hamilton was here in Philadelphia. So it just completed a month ago, but it was 6 months, one of the most incredibly inspired, scholarly researched things. Says, this fall, journey through Hamilton's Philadelphia, and Hamilton was here, rising up in revolutionary Philadelphia. It reveals connections between our own city and Alexander Hamilton's extraordinary contributions to the nation's founding. Scenic environments and facilitated games, visitors will actively engage in the challenges of founding and maintaining a country and will be inspired to carry these lessons forward as they face the challenges of citizenship today. It's come a long way. And again, this is the second one where we're a little bit proud, so please bear with me. On the wall, which is always a pretty neat thing in these big museums, if you've contributed in a significant way, is very kind that they thanked us for our contribution to highlighting those elements that they relied upon. Here's a new one. As was mentioned by Adam, the first capital of the United States under the U.S. Constitution was New York City for 2 years, and I went to Philadelphia for 10 before D.C. And deservingly, it's always been known as where George Washington was inaugurated as the first president of the United States. Look at the difference now on the patch that they give out. They now have Washington and Hamilton because the young people are just so excited. It's really such a big draw. Adam mentioned about saving the $10, but that was very scary for us because one of the few things, you know, that people did notice about Hamilton is one marketing element that we had before the musical really kicked off. And so just want to let you know that he is still the $10 founding father without a father, got a lot farther by.
Working a lot harder.
By.
Being a lot smarter.
By.
Put him in charge of the trading
self-starter. Good, excellent, excellent. Okay, as was mentioned, again, Alexander Hamilton founded the U.S. Coast Guard in 1790. They never had a statue at the U.S. Coast Guard Academy until October 12th. And this is the Commandant, Carl Schultz, on the left. That is the highest level officer of the U.S. Coast Guard, and that was the unveiling. One quick interesting thing, usually bronze statues are bronze. Look at the new techniques of oxidization where you can see the silver buttons. Oh, sorry. You can see the silver buttons, you can see the different color of the pants, the shirt, the gold. It's just remarkable. It's just one of the most beautiful statues that exists. There's a final statement in the Hamilton musical. It says, who lives, who dies.
Who tells your story?
Who lives, who dies, who tells your story. Boom, right? It ends and you've got all these goosebumps as you're leaving the theater, right? But who's been telling the story for the last couple hundred years about Alexander Hamilton? No one, or if they did, it was pretty dark and sinister and all these terrible adjectives about him. This shows you the extent of what happened. Alexander Hamilton was hiding in plain sight. There is one of the most outstanding Hamilton advocates who was a great studier of history, American history. In fact, oh yes, we have some young people, well, all young, but some younger, that AP US history, you got to study really hard, right, to pass that. And if you do, I knew you could get 3 credits. What I didn't know is that if you really scored really high, you got 5 credits. This person got 5 credits in AP US history. This person double majored in economics and political science. And do you know what the response was when we shared some of these findings from 2011? Hamilton, he was a non-entity. Look at the majors. Look at how she scored. She knew how strong he was. So this person who's an incredible researcher went in to validate some of these findings, embraced it, thought that he deserved it, and has joined the team. So this is an example about how much Hamilton was hidden in our society. So this is what changed and led to a society in 2011. 47 individuals were studied, and Hamilton was late because it just didn't seem like you wanted to learn about him because he was characterized, and then he was in the finance field. You know, who wants to study that? So, but it was at the end of that. I had read 51,000 pages up to 2011, plus thousands of pages of primary sources, read books on the founding era and books on Hamilton, and came to the clear understanding that Hamilton had been mischaracterized and buried. So, I tried to explain all this awesomeness of Hamilton's legacy, and I got nowhere. It was impossible. No one was going to read all this stuff. So I had to find a way to clearly, quickly communicate what Hamilton was and how he compared to the other founding fathers. So, just two things quickly. 2 one-hour presentations, we should be done. No, I do it in 3 minutes each, okay? I ranked who helped Washington the most win the war and win the peace. And these were the partners and founders that I included in that comparison. So then I said, okay, took Washington's public service, and from 1775, the Revolutionary War, went back to Mount Vernon, Constitution was established, first term as president, second term as president, and then the quasi-war, which is when we were preparing to go to war with France because they were stealing our sailors and our ships and our cargo. And so then I said, okay, if this is what Washington did, what did each founder do in that same time frame? And compare it. So there's the chart now. I worked for IBM, it was my professional career, so sometimes they say, you're used to bar chart, but your average public audience may not be comfortable, so make sure they understand. So on each founder's bar chart, if they were very valuable to Washington, they got solid coloring on their part of the bar chart. If there's less color, they were somewhat valuable to Washington, and if it's white, little to no value to Washington. Here it is. This is the result. Okay, let's just stay with me. It may be hard for you, might have to stand to see, but on the bottom right, Ben Franklin, John Jay, James Madison, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Henry Knox, Alexander Hamilton. We're going to compare. The more the color,
more help.
More valuable. The less the color. Okay, here's the result. You might have to squeeze and squint very carefully to see here. See if you can figure out. So what I had to do is I had to get that clear, and then in my 1 hour presentation I discuss all the color. So people would know that the color was valid. And I always ask people, am I missing something? In fact, my wife, again, almost wanted to divorce me because I put up a $10,000 reward if anyone could come up with someone who would have a darker, fuller chart, or if they thought I missed something. After 3 years, I was able to get rid of that. My wife was happy. And one of the first things I get is, oh yeah, you're a Hamilton guy, so you just want to make Jefferson look really bad. So really quickly with me, we're just going to talk 2 things quickly. Did he put on a uniform and fight in the Revolutionary War? Others helped Washington. Was he here to help write the Constitution? Where was he? France. He helped write theirs. And in the musical, it summarized the whole thing. So what did I miss? Ba-da-da-da-da, what did I miss? He wasn't here. And then you'll see a fading out here of both Jefferson near the end of the first term as president. And let me get the statement from the musical. Jefferson says, I couldn't undo Hamilton's financial programs if I tried. And I tried. And the only other one I want to point out quickly is Franklin. He passed away actually April 17th, just a few days from now, in 1790. That's the reason. He did so much before and during, but that's that. Okay, so Alexander Hamilton was George Washington's indispensable partner in war and peace for over 22 years. And he was a non-entity for the last 80 years in our history. It's just really interesting. It's available on C-SPAN. You can just do C-SPAN videos, Scholet, or C-SPAN videos, AHA Society. Okay, let's keep moving. Number 2 presentation I put together. Who was most helpful in the vision for America and the foundations we live with today? So I did the same thing. I'm a simpleton. All right, so we have a U.S. Constitution. All right, that's one of the key foundations of our nation. Here is the U.S. Constitution. This is it. This is the whole executive branch. Thank you. That was Mrs. Hamilton. Whole executive branch. And so this was a promise. The Constitution was a promise. If you really read the Constitution, it's neat, but it's an outline. It tells you how old you have to be, what couple of things are listed you're going to do, how to get rid of you and impeach you if necessary. So a lot of it was the next step, which is putting it into practice. Writing those checks and balances. They weren't defined in the Constitution itself. So people had to create the executive branch, make it work, had to create the legislative branch and the judicial branch and find out how to work together, where one wasn't too dominant over the other. So this is great. And in our history books and in Philadelphia, they all celebrate our government system. That's one part of the pillar. The other part of the pillar has not gotten the attention, and that's the economic and financial branch. Many countries have taken our Constitution and it falls because you don't have strong ability to create jobs and for the citizens to be happy and to strive. So those are the 2 pillars. So what I did was very simple. If for those foundational elements, if they substantially contributed, dark color, solid color, somewhat contributed to those foundations we live with today, less color, little to no contribution, white. Okay, here we go. All right, you see the ones on the bottom? Franklin, Jay, Madison, Adams, Jefferson, Hamilton, and Washington. He's in the mix here. Here we go. This is the 8th year, and no one has challenged it. It's based in all the information, is based in fact. The only one that's changed, I did have a change, and it was on this chart. I had to strengthen. I thought for sure it would be John Jay would be much more solid as Supreme Court Justice than Hamilton. But this incredible Kate Elizabeth Brown just put out a book that dove into the documents, the law cases, that is so beyond. Actually, if I could make it more solid for Hamilton, it would be deserving. I always mention that Marshall had a lot to do in putting it in concrete what was happening in this time frame. Okay, and that's it. So Alexander Hamilton created the vision, and in my talk that it's going to be coming out this year, I gave it at the Washington Crossing of the Delaware up in Pennsylvania, so that will be out. And actually Alexander Hamilton introduces me, so that's in Castle, so that's really nice. And I talk about the visionary elements of the different founders and which ones survive to today. It's really fascinating. Okay, here we go. We're through the serious part. Now we'll get to more of the musical part. So we talked about the man, and maybe he does deserve some of this esteem and attention he's getting. Maybe it's just not all Broadway exaggeration and fluff. So I'll talk about the magic of the appeal. And there are many ways to try to describe it, and I'll think of a better way, and you'll give me some better ways. But really, it's amazing how it bridged the gaps in our society in many different ways. Race, by having different people of different color and nationalities performing it, and all of a sudden, people felt included in our nation. In fact, I talked to Dobby Diggs and Christopher Jackson at different times, and almost the same exact answer from them. You know, being an African American, I really didn't relate, didn't really seem to take care of me very well. But when I had to study to learn about putting it together and the debates and the difficulties, my respect did grow. It was not perfect. I would have loved if they just declared it, but then I saw the unreality that we never would have come together as a nation. And so about our Constitution, what they said is, we learned that it provided flexibility, so when we got our thought together, we had the mechanisms to make it more perfect and make it more right. And so that's what and they've seen the progress for people of color and immigrants and women. So that's helped a lot, and now people of different races, some Asian Americans feel more involved in our nation as well. And I could go on all these a lot, but I'm just going to touch on generationally. One of the joyful things is to see young people with their parents and grandparents, but something has changed. It used to be the parents dragging these kids. It's the opposite now. The kids are dragging them. At Yorktown Battlefield, Paul Carson, the chief of interpretation, said, "That's the strangest thing I've ever seen. The kids are excited. They're jumping up and down. Mom and Dad, you got to see this. The world's turned upside down." Politically, it's the only thing that many of us have ever seen where Dick Cheney, the Clintons, the Bushes, and the Obamas agree on something. And it's the transformative nature and positive nature of this musical. Genders. There's just a nice balance in the musical. Women strong, determined, showing, for example, Elizabeth Schuyler Hamilton, what she created on her own, her leadership, her forgiveness, her strength, starting the orphanage. And some of you may have caught it, but she and Dolly Madison were the two that raised the funds for the Washington Monument. She lived to 97 years old, as you know, died in Washington, D.C. And our now president of the AHA Society did an analysis that floored us, and she presented at George Washington University in D.C. She was able to identify that Eliza Hamilton had contact with the first 14 presidents of the United States. Remarkable, remarkable woman. Musical styles. At first, this was a rap musical, and there were some people that were Hamilton fans. I'm not going to go see that thing. And then hip hop was the next thing, and so. But when people really see it, which many of you have, it's really a collection of all styles, right? The blues and the Beatles and traditional Broadway and rap, and also it's again bridged the gap of different kind of musical styles. Teacher and student, oh my goodness, it has transformed it. In fact, what's shocking is the students know more now than the teachers. Why? The teachers were taught the mischaracterization of Hamilton, or he just didn't exist. So why would we bring him up? Because like, hey, teacher, he did this. And so then the teachers got excited because the kids were now excited. The kids wanted to do reports. Can I do a report? Can I do a report on Hamilton? Like, it's really, really strange. And a couple of the quotes from some of the teachers. The biggest difference for me teaching history pre and post Hamilton is that students seem to see the lives of historical figures as deeply personal now, rather than just a detached study of events. Another teacher, the Hamilton musical created a storm of accessibility and interest in the nation, how it was formed, and the government today. Students found a renewed interest in historical events and people. Teachers found a new platform to engage students, and the last one, it made early American history a thing for young people. It's just the joy. And it's uniting us because different groups thought that they didn't really belong to the founding and didn't respect it. When you go back, it's quite amazing. And the amazing thing is the same arguments they had then are the same exact ones we're fighting over now. It's a whole nother presentation. So it's just wonderful to see that. The native born versus immigrant. You know, immigrants coming in will look and just, again, feel out of place, not feel included, and just seeing Hamilton's example of digging in, making himself better, studying, becoming useful, creating networks, that they see that immigrants, it was a very positive thing. Economic status, I'm going to talk a little bit about Title I, low income students, all the way up to movie stars and famous people who couldn't get tickets to the Hamilton musical. It was amazing. People who could always get anything they wanted. They couldn't get it. They could not get a ticket. That's how amazing. So it really united everyone, no matter what economic status, and joy and gratitude. You see the late night talk shows, you see articles and all. It crosses economic ground. The nation's founding, again, it's helping unite us, helping us have some understanding. And I think when there's understanding, then there's respect. And if we're going to keep our experiment going as a nation, we may want to be responsible ourselves to learn what that is, to know what to fight for or let fall away. We have to keep reclaiming it. And so that's a great service. And the interest in history, it's very clear. People showing up for history, especially the young people. It's remarkable. The young people, the energy, the joy. Now, I just added this at 2 o'clock this morning. I kept saying, no, 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 no. But yes, 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 because there's a segment of the population that this has bridged a gap. And that's for the individual. You would not believe the number of discussions people have with us about how, especially as a young person or a teenager, they feel is empty or this void or not happy or depressed or what's the future about. They said that this bridge to now, they feel fuller, they feel energized, they feel inspired, and they're looking forward to doing things. They feel more hopeful than before. So it's really, again, the musical has contributed in that way. All right, so this is back now in 2013. We're going to talk about what happened before it went on. And this is really famous. Vassar, I know many of you know Vassar. I see some now. Who knows Vassar College? Famous women's college up till the 60s, then became co-ed. And my wife and I got married in the chapel there. Anyway, so it was the 225th anniversary of Alexander Hamilton helping New York State ratify the U.S. Constitution in Poughkeepsie, the same place where Vassar College is. That was July 26th. So there was going to be this music, a reading festival they called it, and we got word that Lin had written the first half of the musical. And he was going to, just share it a little bit with some other fellow thespians. And that's what they do in these reading festivals. They bring dozens and they give feedback and all that kind of thing. So I tried to get through all the levels of, not bureaucracy, but just trying to get through. I said, it would be so great if on Saturday the 27th, we have all these descendants of Livingston, Hamilton, and John Jay, and all in Clinton. Could you try to do it? Oh, no, talk to this person. All of a sudden they got a call. Hey, we're going to do it on the 27th. So they said, how many tickets would you like? I said, 10. Oh, 10, okay. So we got the 10, and here's the price. Here's the ticket, and here's the price. You can see. Of course, the thing was you had to have a ticket. But yeah, it didn't cost anything, and there it is. It was called the mixtape. There it is, July 27, 2013. Here's some early pictures. This is before the making. The making started taking pictures in September. This was 2 months earlier in July. Here is Ron Chernow, Lin-Manuel Miranda. This is the beatbox guy who's just really, really talented. And this is Chris Jackson, okay, who was there. And here is a music stand. You can't see it's too dark, but what they did is they just had Lin pulled 6 or 7 of his talented people together, gave them three roles. They just put the music stands there. They took a couple weeks and started working it out. And so they just stood on stage and just went from role to role to role. And that's what we saw. And we knew, our vice president at the time, she and I knew, once we heard, so what did I miss? The power, the brevity, the clarity, the engagement, and we saw that going. All right. This I just found recently, and it showed who was at the Vassar workshop. I didn't know this existed. See, Lin was there, Chris Jackson, David Diggs, then off-Broadway and on-Broadway, so that was pretty neat. And there is, here's Hamilton, and here's the Hamilton Society guy. This is another divorce, number 2. Getting tickets. Now, it was only 250 seats at the Public Theater off-Broadway. And yeah, it was filled, but it's only 250 seats. So no one really knew the sales explosion. But we knew there'd be a good amount of interest. So I was ready. I was on Ticketmaster. I had my credit card was valid, up to date. Everything's there, ready to go. And they told us it was going to be at 10 a.m. And I found out, luckily, the day before they changed it to 9 a.m. for tickets to go on sale. So I'm there. I said, okay, we need 8 front mezzanine. I go on, boom. People already vying for those. People already vying. Okay, 4 and 4. Oh, 3, 3, 2, 2. I'm like, oh my goodness. So I got the 8, but it was going so fast. I said, oh, people are either going to have hangovers Sunday morning or going to church, probably, and probably wouldn't get it. So this is what I did. I bought 37 tickets. And when my wife says, what is this on the credit card? I said, oh, there won't be a problem there. I'll be able to, and I gave them at face value. But the head of the National Park Service for New York, Philadelphia, and the Museum of American Finance, so very, very grateful because they really went out. And what was really neat, our society held a gala dinner. So we had Ron Chernow, Richard Brookhiser, Tom Fleming, Michael Newton, Joanne Freeman before we went over to see. It was just a very magical night. So I didn't know these things. I didn't know you had a musical at a reading festival. I didn't know the opening night wasn't when it opens. They have, the first night, they give them a few weeks to work out the kinks, and then they have an official one a few weeks later. So this is the few weeks later, the official one. And here we are on the red carpet. It was black, but they call it the red carpet. And you'll see it was mentioned, we had the hashtag Save a Hamilton, but we partnered with Barbara Howard on the Women on the 20s. We were fighting for them to keep the women, to put women on the $20 bills, and they wanted to support us on the 10. Of course, the women are smart because all the ATMs, give 20s. Okay. Just to tell you, many of you have experienced this. Let's see if I can see it. So on the left is Dobby Diggs, then Carly, who was her first time performing Eliza that night. And then me, President, there's Renee, and you can see the little bit of Ron Chernow's head there. And then John Rua, he had stepped in for Javier because he got cancer. I'm sure you may have heard about that. So he actually was a backup to Lynn for quite a long time. Wonderful. There's Sergio and our friend. The reason I share this with people is because people say, oh, I didn't get to see the original Broadway. Yes, they're wonderful. But because of the popularity of the musical, all the top talent in the nation wants to be part of the Hamilton News. The best dancers, best singers, best electrical, best road crew, best planners, lighting and all. So you have experienced the same thing, that you really have the talent, and they were just wonderful. Here's that making of the Hamilton musical. So here is Doug Hamilton, the 5th grade grandson, in front of the grave monument for Hamilton. This is the premiere of Nevis, where Hamilton was born. This is where Eliza's buried, right here. And there are a number of others there. This is Weehawken and the Bluffs, over where the duel happened. Here is the memorial to Hamilton, just a beautiful view of what Hamilton helped create from his financial and economic system. You can see the boom, and there's Alex working on that. And again, this is the third and last one, but from a little guy from upstate New York, it was very exciting to see our society there with 60 Minutes, CBS News, National Park Service, Museum of American Finance, and also, okay, that's the end for us. This is interesting. Last July, there's a talk of $50 million being offered to be able to show the Broadway show. They did film the whole show. They have it in the archives, so that may be coming in the future. This, one of our advocates, Helena Reynolds from the state of Washington, went to San Juan in January and saw the musical there. And there's Lynn, as part of just one of the performers that day. And this was just one that was just posted. I thought it was really neat. You see the joy, the young people and the families and grandparents. They're just really, really amazed. Okay. And where is the musical showing outside of the United States?
London. Australia.
Soon. Yeah, London. Who is the greatest producer of musicals in the world? Cameron Mackintosh, yes. He's the one who created Cats, Les Mis, and Phantom. Oh my. So he came, saw it off Broadway, and said, I gotta have this one. And Lynn said that he would definitely perform the Hamilton role, but he wasn't going to be the first Hamilton in London, but he would come and do a showcase at some point. So this is what he did. Cameron McIntosh bought the Victoria Palace Theatre for this show. It's undisclosed. I did a lot of research, undisclosed how much he paid for the theatre, but he paid £61, which I calculated, to 8 million just to upgrade the theatre. This is it, Hamilton. So this is what the summary, 2 pages of what the musical does cover about Hamilton's life. His childhood and youth. He's an immigrant from the Caribbean. His lifetime relationships, family and friends. He was in the artillery as a Revolutionary War soldier, and he was on Washington's chief of staff. Oh yes, I meant to tell you, remember the bar charts? I was going to say, it must be nice, it must be nice. And then during the foundations and stuff, it was Hamilton's ideas, but he needed leadership to let it try. So it must be nice, it must be nice to have Washington on your side. As chief of staff, he served in the New York state and federal congresses. He was a constitutional delegate. As many of you know, the only delegate from New York to sign the Constitution. Secretary of Treasury, founded the National Bank, founded the Coast Guard. He was in his cabinet. And there were 2 duels, of course, the elder Philip and dealing with the death. This is what it doesn't cover. It didn't need to. I'm just sharing what some other key. Hamilton ended up being the Major General of the military. And you will talk to people in the Marines, the Army, and the Navy, they'll say, we started in 1775. No. The Continental Army, the Continental Marines and Navy were disbanded in 1783, and the last ship and arms were sold in 1784. The Jeffersonians said, we're not going to have an Army or Navy because these Federals will be tempted to use it. It wasn't until 1794 that the Naval Act was even passed, that in the future we could have a Navy. Well, then I told you about the Quasi-War. That was 1798. And John Adams, as president, asked Washington to come back to be commander-in-chief. And Washington said, okay, but I will be inactive until the fighting actually begins, and I will define the major generals that report to me and the order of them. He chose Alexander Hamilton to be the major general of the military. So in 1798, when those 3 branches were formed, Alexander Hamilton led the forming of those. He was a precedent-setting lawyer, both on, incredibly, after fighting the British loyalists for 4 years, he turns around and defends the British loyalists against the overreach of the New York legislature to punish them. And Hamilton said, we need to keep their money here. They are loyal now to us. They deserve to have respect for individual rights. And that he was the visionary and architect of our nation's economic and financial systems that were the envy of the world. Okay, and lastly, he founded the U.S. Mint, the U.S. Customs. He was superintendent of U.S. Lighthouses. A lot of people think it's cool that Hamilton chose Cape Hatteras. And when we were there, the National Park Service is superintendent, and they call it Hamilton's Light. So I thought that was really neat. And people that really study Hamilton say the most incredible, inspiring, monumental report is on manufacturing, how it led the vision. It took us 80 years to catch up to it, but that's really incredible. And he was a leader in U.S. foreign policy. When you find out what he did and what he helped influence Washington during it, it's very inspiring. Okay, we're near the end. And the basis for all government accounting. All right, the impact on Hamilton. Now there's an awareness of his. There's now some respect for him, and his legacy has increased. His of really begun is now really substantially raised. There's more inclusion in articles and books. I just read Valley Forge, and I guarantee you, 5 years ago, there might have been a blip, but now he has a regular, fair representation of his role. And there's more books, not only included in it, but there's more books on Hamilton. And it's likely, after the last 80 years, after FDR deified Jefferson, and just pretty much erasing the universities were Jeffersonians, that now things are shifting, things are, we really have a sense, young people especially demanding it, they better show up in the textbook. But please, everybody be very alert. We watch this every day. Many positive things came out, and I knew this was going to happen, but now there's all these contra people, you know, about slavery and stuff, and making stuff up, selective stuff up. We'll point out one thing and not talk about the 5 or 6 phenomenal things. And people just want to be contrarian because so many people like Hamilton, now we need to do it. I will just tell you honestly that 99% of what you hear that's negative about Hamilton is not supported by the facts. It took me many years to realize that most of the negative things said about Hamilton were from those on the opposing side, that were trying to stop Hamilton's programs, and that were so frustrated that he kept getting support of Washington to do these things. Just be alert. And that's why our society performs that role to help recommend the books. I'm just going to give you 3 as we end. I think there's 5 or 6 slides left. Thank you for being so attentive. This deserves a slide because the Rockefeller Foundation, the Hamilton Musical, Lin-Manuel Miranda, and the Gilder Lehrman Institute came together to do a remarkable thing that's transforming our nation. First of all, the Rockefeller Foundation committed $8 million to make sure that 250,000 Title I low-income students get to see the Hamilton musical by the end of next year. So what they did in New York, I don't know how they're doing it in other cities as they moved on, they would do a matinee on Wednesdays that was just for those Title I schools. Remarkable. So what the musical agreed to do is only charge $70 a ticket. Gilder Lehrman committed $60 of the 70, so the students only had to pay a Hamilton dollar bill. But the students had to do research, they had to submit it, they had to do a performance piece, 2 minutes, rap, poetry, reading, dancing, whatever is part of that to be chosen to be able to do it. The Gilder Lehrman Institute now has moved out from that. They're expanding it, and Marianne and I were able to go, I was asked to speak at one of the 2 libraries chosen in Florida for these materials to be more available to the general public. And now it's going to move even further and go out to more and more teachers. The latest scholarship on the first half of Hamilton's life, it's incredible. It's incredible. It's the formative years on Alexander Hamilton. And this gentleman, Michael Newton, has extensive discoveries in the last, from 2017 to 2019, discoveringhamilton.com. It's incredible. He's been getting records from Denmark, because St. Croix, where Hamilton was, learning all about international trade. It was all in this old Gothic Danish. People that speak Danish cannot understand old, so there are only like 2 people. And so he's been working to do that. For the full length, the best full length Hamilton biographies, some people aren't into reading big books. Good job, there's a big book reader. Oh, very good. So Richard Brookhiser, part of the Gilder Lehrman, he did a lot of the exhibits in the 2004. It's only 220 pages, it's complete, scholarly, solid. The fullest, inspiringly written biography by Ron Chernow, and then only for the real geek, scholarly nerds that run out of Hamilton books to read, incredible Forrest McDonald on how what Hamilton did transform our whole economy and people's habits, and getting money from the rich people and feeding it to be fuel for the middle class. It's really quite remarkable. Okay, just 2 or 3 left. Thank you for that. So this is our society, the AHA Society. You've got the card that was on your chair, the ahasociety.org. All things Hamilton, all places. If you're going to travel, you want to know where that was, how to get there, what stop to get off on in subway in New York City. Just type in all places Hamilton. Hamilton the musical, Hamilton the man. The major gift is that the musical gave people permission now to look at his legacy. That's the gift. If you look, how's a computer science guy for IBM? So I don't know how to do this, but I just started looking, and I found it. So anyone can find it. His record's been available for over 200 years. It's been enriched by Elizabeth Schuyler Hamilton over 150 years, where she got people to go and interview people who knew him, and she captured those. She got the letters that were sent from Alexander Hamilton to those people, and she would collect those. Then, most importantly, she fought for a number of years and got the Library of Congress to take them, protect them, print them, and make them available to people. The musical didn't make the man made the man. Thank you very much for being here. Remember, Aaron Burr was the sitting vice president of the United States when he did that. And he did leave for a while, went to Philadelphia, went down south. Interestingly, he was still vice president of the United States. He came back and very astutely led, because he's president of the Senate, right? He's president of the Senate when you're vice president of the United States. And he led that very nobly, and they welcomed him back after killing the previous Secretary of Treasury. It was illegal to duel in New York, so they went over to Weehawken. The truth is, it was also illegal in New Jersey, but they didn't enforce it. So some people say, oh, that's because it wasn't illegal. It was. Yes? This is the way that we describe it. We embrace it, we love it, it's been a gift. The essence of the musical is accurate. And it didn't take exaggeration liberties to overdo it. So a lot of respect for it. There are nuances where for time, so they had to merge things together. But whatever isn't specifically accurate is unimportant. Let's put it that way. All the important things are accurate, and so you can feel very comfortable about it. Yes, other question? Yes. Yeah, why didn't Hamilton ever run for president? He never wanted to be president. No one ever encouraged him to be president. President, you got to preside, and you need to be above it. And Hamilton was an action-oriented kind of person. He was the one going out there and making things happen. He was a transformative person, and that gave him the freedom to do it. He was studying, analyzing, putting things in place. If he was president, when you study his life for law and being president never was discussed or interested. Just wasn't. Other people thought he might. He never expressed an interest. Yes. Alexander Hamilton wrote more public pages of documents than all the other founding fathers put together. As Adam shows, the John Jay Treaty, right. Hamilton was involved with 42 essays. Whenever Washington needed the defense of anything in his administration, he ran to Alexander Hamilton, like Jefferson ran to Madison. So both are true. Both are not having Washington there protecting and encouraging and listening to Hamilton anymore. We're free of that. But the writings, and one last thing, and then hopefully it's a quick one. When were the Bill of Rights year, except for Adam, adopted by Congress? 1789, and yes, I did hear 1791 was when it was ratified. Listen to that, 1791, 13 years later, people think, oh, we have the Bill of Rights, we have all the protections. No, it had to find out what it meant. 13 years later, Alexander Hamilton led the case of Jefferson versus Croswell up in Hudson, New York, where at the time the British law states that if I say something bad about you and it hurts you, and you can show it hurt your business, you could sue me, and I would lose. Hamilton said, wait a second. If what I say about you is true, why should I ever be penalized? So Hamilton, right up through, settling land titles and stuff all the way through, he was very powerful. But he wasn't so much at the national level after 1800, after those years as Major General of all the armed forces. He then was doing, merchant insurance, merchant protection, and legal work. All right, well, thank you very much. I'm available for more questions. We have eaters, and thanks to Adam Levinson. Yeah. This gentleman for the exhibit and inviting deserves a lot of credit. Make sure you come. And Marianne Hamilton loves to meet people. Come up and say hello to her.